Tennessee This Week from WATE 6 on your side starts now.
Hello and welcome to Tennessee This Week. I'm Don Hudson. We are following up on plans to take a closer look at how Tennessee handles criminal sentencing and how the state follows through with those sentences in prison and really beyond that. The conversation making headlines really after violent incidents in Memphis, happening really within days of each other. First, you had Eliza Fletcher, the woman who was abducted and killed while out on a morning jog. And then 4 people were killed in a shooting spree that was going out live on Facebook at the time. Now, here in Tennessee, we've seen a couple of trends stand out on the top of criminal justice. One calls for getting tough on crime. Even before those killings, the General Assembly passed a truth in sentencing bill pressing for certain criminals to serve their full sentences rather than have a chance at parole. Governor Lee did let that become law without his signature. He has actually advocated for criminal justice reform, backing a program last year to help employers hire former prisoners and creating sentencing alternatives for nonviolent offenders. So how do you balance those two trends, and really what is going to work? Well, join us to talk about this subject, State Representative Andrew Farmer, a Republican in District 17, covering Sevier and Jefferson County, serving for 10 years. Just appointed the chair ad hoc committee looking at criminal sentencing supervision in Tennessee. Right. So first off, what does that mean? What will you be looking for? What will you be looking at?
We're going to be looking at a lot. Let's just start out. We're going to look at TDOC. We're going to be looking at those involved in making decisions on when convicted felons are released from prison. You know, obviously, I think we're looking at this situation where a convict was released early,
right?
Had committed multiple offenses while in TDOC custody, and gets out early.
And we're talking about the Eliza Fletcher case.
Yeah, we sure are.
Yeah.
And our hearts goes out to her and her family.
Right, and that would be one thing. Someone saying, you know, he serves his full term.
Right.
And so is that one of the things that you'll be looking at is the length of sentences, or if someone does serve their full term under the current system and the current way of doing things, that's just delaying when they'll start committing crimes again?
I think from a policy standpoint, we look at it like this. Speaker Sexton carried legislation this past year, that said, look, for these violent crimes, you're going to serve 100%. You're going to serve the entire 100% before you get out. Right. For these violent crimes, you're going to serve at least 85%. And if you behave and you do not get any trouble while in prison, you're going to get out at that 85%. Right? I think we need to start treating folks who have broken the law in a major way. We're talking about people who's went to a vehicle, put a gun to your head, they've kidnapped, they've raped, they've murdered, right? And this isn't the first time they've been in trouble. So why are we rewarding folks in prison for a reason? Why are we cutting back on their time? They need to be serving 100% of that time. Now, we need to provide them a way to learn, be educated, learn a trade. Let's teach them HVAC work. It's things that maybe welding or something like that. Let's give them every opportunity to learn and excel, right? And every benefit we can give them. But at the same time, if they're going to do the crime, they need to face the time.
Right. And do you think that that's what's going on? Because some people are just doing the time, or say, hey, if I behave while I do the time, I'll get out. But are they really a different person?
Right. And that's the billion-dollar question. How do we know if they're a different person? Well, let's look at that this way. If someone's in jail and they're making good on their time, say they're getting a GED, they're behaving, they're not committing more crimes while in jail, they're not facilitating more crimes while in jail on the outside as well, because a lot of people will go in, sneak phones in, and help facilitate crimes on the streets. Right? Let's take those folks and try to recognize the folks that are working hard and trying to rehabilitate themselves and reward them in ways, but not the folks who aren't. Right.
As you go into this, do you already have an idea of what reform looks like? Or it's like, okay, this might work, but we really don't know. Let's dig in there and find out. It might be something completely different.
Well, we're going to talk to a lot of different people about that. I think we're going to start with TDOC, and we're going to find out why Miss Fletcher's killer was released early while committing crimes while in the prison. I think we're going to start there. And we're going to get as many folks in front of our committee as possible to give us the information we need to make those decisions. You know, Speaker Sexton was kind enough to point me to this committee, but he also appointed me a committee to look at our youth development facilities, to look at Department of Corrections, and I've had the opportunity to go to Wilder Youth Development Facility out in West Tennessee, also Mountain View over here in East Tennessee, and Dandridge. And what we're learning is that these children, the youth that are in those facilities, all they know they never had a mentor. They never were told, hey, this is wrong. This is the right way to do it, right? So what we want to do, we want to look to try to catch these youths early on,
right.
even earlier before they end up in our youth development facilities, right? Let's catch them early. Let's try to give them a good example of what right is and what wrong is, and that there are consequences for your actions, right? There's consequences, and you have to accept responsibility when you've done something wrong.
Right. I read somewhere once where someone said the only way you truly reform is obviously in the cell block. You've got to give them the tools, and like you said, maybe earn a GED, learn a skill, but the courtroom and the sentencing, but also the community, like you're saying, long before they get there.
Right.
That is a big thing to deal with, though. Mm-hmm. Because if we could start there, we probably would prevent a large percentage of the people actually ending up in prison.
Right, and that's what we're taking on. That's what I'm trying to say. It's not only, yeah, we passed a law, but that's not going to do the trick, right? You got to have people that are hearts in the right place, and we got to incentivize folks who's know nothing but crime their entire life to turn their life around and go in the right direction, right? And to learn how to work and to want to work, most importantly.
Is that something that you can do for someone? I mean, there's going to be a certain mindset, obviously, of somebody who's committed crime, and maybe the mindset just says, I have no other options, and then they find options. You think that from a psychological type and mental type place will work?
Yeah, I do, but I'm going to say this. Reform is not going to be for everyone.
Right.
Some folks are just down a path, too far down that path. We're not going to be able to reform everyone. We're going to do everything we can as a government, state government, and I know we got a lot of support across this state and across this country. We want to see people succeed. We're going to give them every opportunity to succeed, but we're not going to be able to reform everyone who's committed crimes because some folks have just too far down the road.
Yeah.
And we got to realize that. So we got to be able to focus on those who we can save from that life and put our attention there. And that's why I said, you know, if we could, the earlier we can catch these kids early on, keep them out of our youth development facilities, and hopefully keep them out of our state penitentiaries.
Right. If we have people serving their complete sentence, their entire sentence,
right.
and you know, not rewarding or days off, will we have to build more prisons? Will we have to pay a little bit more in taxes? And if so, do you think the people in Tennessee are willing to say, hey, I'll pay a little bit more to be safer? Do we even have any idea how they'll respond to that?
I do. I think Tennesseans want to be safe, and I think they feel as safe as anybody, as any resident of any other state in this country right now. And if it takes building more prisons, then that's something we're going to do. I think there's an appetite for that in the legislature. I think that there's something to be said about having people accept responsibility for what they've done, right? Especially, like I said, if they've stuck a gun to someone's head, if they've broken into someone's house, if they've raped someone, if they've kidnapped someone, if they've murdered someone, they're going to have to face the consequences.
Right. Now, and you've been in this position, not with the committee, but at the State House for 10 years. So in those 10 years, is it just a perception that we're getting more violent and more violent acts are being happening out there? Or is that really what is going on, that there is just more violence and a willingness to do it, maybe because there's not as many cops out there or police officers? Does it feel like it's changed you in the last decade?
You know, I think what's changed is technology. You know, I think Facebook, with social media and things like that, of course, we're going to hear about more.
Right.
You know, we've all seen that happen. Now, from a crime perspective, I don't think that our crime in the state of Tennessee has risen that much. Not to the scale of some of these other states and some of the cities where they've just demolished their police force and they haven't supported their police like we have. 100% supported our police and kept our cities and our neighborhoods safe. Right? So I don't think that our crime rate has risen in a way that is out of the ordinary.
Before we wrap this up, we had this big issue with like the rape kit backlog, and that could even be tied to the Eliza Fletcher case because apparently the suspect was a suspect in a rape case that could have maybe been solved before he allegedly kidnapped her and killed her. These other prongs in this, I mean, you have people that commit crimes, they have sentencing, you maybe have training, but what about these other things that could be stopping criminal behavior that aren't getting done?
Right, and I think, and I know there's also an appetite to put in the legislature to put as many resources as possible to see that every rape kit that may be out there, and a lot of it's locals, right? You've got. I know there was a rape kit issue in Memphis, and that's kind of what we're talking about here, right?
Right.
But if he would have done his time and not been let early, we wouldn't be talking about this right now.
Right.
And hopefully Miss Fletcher would still be alive and have her life and still be donate her time to the the facility she was working at, right? So we will do everything we can, and we have been doing so, to see that the resources are there, that there's no untested rape kit in the state of Tennessee.
Yeah. Well, on that poignant point, I think that we'll wrap that up, because that truly is the example of what could be happening, and maybe some of those things that would be prevented as well. So, Representative Farmer, thank you very much for coming in. We'll be back with our panel of pundits to talk about this and other issues. You're watching Tennessee This Week. And welcome back to Tennessee This Week. We are joined now by our panel of pundits, Shelley Breeding, attorney, and George Corda, our political analyst. And I want to start with what we just left off at with Representative Farmer and the things that he was talking about. I'm curious what you think they'll find if they really dig in and they really look at all kinds of issues of before people commit crimes or when they're younger, all the way to prison reform, to the courts, the community. What do you think they're going to find?
Well, I think they're going to find what people have found for generations before them. There are all kinds of problems, all kinds of proposed solutions, and the ultimate issue is, well, why do people feel safe? How do they feel safe? When I was a spokesman for state government, the governor's press secretary used to pluck me out of the department to which I was assigned and send me to work with the media on emergencies in Tennessee prisons. And so I got to visit as a temporary guest, not a resident. Fort Pillow Prison in West Tennessee, the main prison in Nashville, Brushy Mountain Prison, now closed, but it wasn't when I was there. And when I was a reporter in Florida, I did a lot of stories on the prison in our area. And we're schizophrenic about it in this country. When somebody is outside having been accused of committing a crime, something's got to be done about them. They've got to be put away. We've got to clamp down on crime. And then once they're in, there's a whole different constituency that says these folks are victims of the system, victims of society, victims of their upbringing, victims of something. So we have kind of this double-edged sword we're swinging all the time. But the bottom line is, the Pew Research Center said through its research over a decade that in 2020, the crime was lower than it was in the 90s.
Right.
But people don't believe it. And if people don't believe it, it's higher. And the reality is this, that there are very few politicians who are going to be willing to cast a vote to potentially put a felon back on the street, and then that felon commits another crime, and then they're held accountable for what that felon did, because if they'd been inside, they wouldn't be out. And that's a political issue and a societal issue for which there has never been an answer that satisfies even most of it.
Right. Shelley, your thoughts?
I mean, we're not going to solve this problem. This Truth in Sentencing Act that Governor Bill Lee didn't even sign, he let become into law by just laying on his desk, and the fact that he didn't veto it. It requires certain crimes to serve 100% of the sentence. Then there is no incentive for individuals in prison to be on good behavior. I think, and there's going to be more people in prison because they're not getting out early. And I think we're going to have a lot of problems from that. And there's nothing really to show that that's going to lower the crime rate or to keep them from committing crimes when they get out. The recidivism rate is so high in this country, not to mention that our country incarcerates more people than any other country in the world by quite a bit. And so I think we really have to look at what are some programs to prevent crime from happening, as Representative Farmer was saying, when people are young. How do we keep people from ever entering into the system? So I like the fact that they're looking at a holistic approach of how do we keep people out once people are in the system and have been in jail? How do we keep them from going back to jail? And the system it's not a good system. I think we all know that. It's just how do we fix it? So I do like the fact that they're looking at this from a lot of different approaches.
Don, because everybody's got a different solution. you get them early, you put them into this program. But one of the fundamental things that nobody has any control over is as fatherlessness has increased in America, there has been a corresponding impact on young people. And some years ago, and I'm not sure exactly how this relates, but it feels like it does somehow. They were having a problem at an elephant preserve in India because female elephants were being killed and mutilated. And they thought it was poachers coming in, but they couldn't figure out why they were doing it. And when they studied it for a while, they figured out it was young male elephants that were literally killing and mutilating young female elephants. And when they interviewed the keeper, the master of this place, at the end, I thought he was going to say, we found a solution, we're working on this. But he was in despair because he said, the problem we're facing is the male elephants used to keep the young males in line and teach them how to be responsible male elephants. And they've all been killed off. And now the young males coming up are the ones that are committing these terrible acts, and they're going to be teaching the ones beneath them. And I'm wondering sometimes, is there a correlation there? And if that's the case, then we can do all the programs and spend all the money, but we're not really going to get that far. We will have some successes, but they're going to be fewer than we'd like.
If we're speaking of money, will the taxpayers be up for any more expense, or would they be more apt to say, hey, we have some preventative programs, some big brother programs, whatever it is, versus what's going on in jail and keeping people in jail longer, so that costs money too. But would they be more likely to support one or the other, or even will they support any of it when it comes to paying more taxes?
Oh, if you're asking me, I think it'll always fall to locking them up. Because if they're locked up, then you know they're not going to potentially victimize you.
I don't think the taxpayers are going to want to pay for either one. Certainly, this new act that's gone into place is going to cost the taxpayers money, and we've got to find a way to pay for that. There's going to be more people in prison for longer sentences, and they're not going to get out early. I mean, simply put, we're going to have more prisoners in Tennessee, and we're going to have to house them and feed them and have staff to oversee them. It's going to cost a lot of money.
We're going to wrap that discussion up. I'm going to take a quick break, and then we'll talk about a few other things. We're rejoined by our panel of pundits, and we're moving on to other topics that have been in the news lately. We want to start with this idea that we're hearing that some people, Second Amendment, gun issues, where they want banks to actually track purchases of guns. And Shelley, I'll start with you. Do you think that this is going to be okay, or they'll find some lawsuits and it won't happen, will happen legally? It has legs to stand on.
I mean, there's going to be lawsuits. People file lawsuits every day over a variety of issues. I read one today that I thought was preposterous, but you have the right to file it. So there are going to be lawsuits filed over this. But there's some credit card companies who have started tracking gun store purchases. They're not tracking whether it's a gun or whether it's ammunition or armor or a gun safe, but they're tracking that the same way that they track hotel expenses, they track restaurant expenses, and they send you, most of your credit card companies send you a report at the end of the year that helps you track your spending. I don't see how that's illegal for credit card companies to do that. I don't think it's a violation of the Second Amendment for certain. We have lots of laws. The credit card companies are saying this pertains to public safety and being able to show if someone is accumulating very quickly a lot of gun purchases. I just don't see that infringing on anyone's rights by a private company. Certainly you can choose a different company that doesn't track your spending. You can pay for it by a check. You can pay for it by cash. We have similar laws in banking when there are large cash transactions that have to be reported for the safety of the public. I just don't see those lawsuits going anywhere with this.
What are your thoughts about this whole idea, George?
I think political pressure, I don't know whether the lawsuits will be successful or not, but I think the political pressure will be great. This is surveillance of people. And as Shelley said, to see who's buying guns and how many are they buying. I mean, that's not government's business, frankly. Because here, let me give you an example. In any given year, there are around 12,000 homicides in the United States with guns. There are also around 11 or 12,000 people who die as a result of alcohol use in auto accidents. So on that basis, shouldn't we be saying, for public safety purposes, we want credit card companies to start tracking how much alcohol people are buying? Because if somebody's buying too much alcohol, that could make them a public menace. They're a danger to thousands or millions of other Americans. And so we need to track that. Look, I think this is an abominable idea to sit there as a private company. Why are you collecting this information? There's a reason you're collecting it, and it's not for the benefit of the person you are serving. Obviously, what they did, they gave in to somebody who was lobbying them and saying, we're going to make life miserable for you if you don't go along with us. But the idea that credit card companies are going to start independently tracking what it is that people buy on the basis of, oh, this could be dangerous. Well, then who gets to decide what you're buying is dangerous? Right. And what the credit card company's information should be available to be given to someone else. This is a terrible idea. This isn't 1984. This isn't Oceania. This isn't where we have telescreens where people are watching us every minute of the day. It's just awful.
I guess one part of this is that they already knew anyway. I mean, you know, when you go look at your credit card bill, they already knew. I guess it's just a matter of how that information is going to be used differently.
Compiled and used.
Yeah, if that's the case. All right, immigration. Before we go, we'll get on that subject. Migration. I don't have all the numbers, but I've heard it's more than 4 million since President Biden took office. I hear there's like 4,000 a day. Now this focus seems to be that when Governor Abbott in Texas or Governor DeSantis in Florida sends some of these migrants to other places. Bad move, good move,
brilliant move. Whoever came up with this ain't getting paid enough, because nobody was paying any attention to this. Most of the major media in this country were paying no attention to the border. And I submit that if Trump were president and this were going on, the attention would be mammoth. But nobody was paying any attention to it. And now, because northeastern states and sanctuary cities and states, people who made a big show out of being sanctuary cities, we've got open arms, come on. Now they're having to deal with it. Now they're in a full court freak out. They want federal government help. They want National Guard. And what it has done is it has forced this issue into the public eye in a stronger way. And I'll guarantee you that most Americans, most sensible Americans, don't look at 50 migrants in Martha's Vineyard as a world-shattering situation, or a few thousand busts to Washington, D.C. and New York, when actually the number is closer to 5 million migrants have come across the southern border since Joe Biden took office and basically gave them an invitation. So they're reaping what they sowed.
I think it's a stunt. I mean, DeSantis had to go to Texas to get migrants. And there's an investigation into this. He didn't do it because Florida was having a problem with immigrants. He had to go to Texas to find them. And then the investigation is showing that these people are being used as a pawn in this political game. And I think we have to remember that these are people. And they were promised hotels, and they thought they were going to different city, maybe Chicago or Boston. And then they're put up in a hotel. They're told they're going to have jobs. And then they're flown to Martha's Vineyard. They had no idea where they were going. These are people that we're doing this to, that Governor DeSantis did this to, that is very similar to trafficking people.
Oh, for crying out loud. Shelley, come on.
You cannot lure people in with promises of things and then send
Shelley,
them.
The New York Times has reported that since Joe Biden took office, human trafficking on the southern border has become $1 billion business. Yeah. Well, there were 53 migrants. There were 53 migrants who died in a truck. Did you hear all the outrage over that? No.
I think it's terrible. I think it's terrible. That is just as terrible. I mean, that's worse than what this is. But that doesn't make this okay, to lure people and lie to them and then to send them somewhere on a plane.
How do you know?
Either way. Obviously, one is doing something for show, and the other is a very horrible thing when real human trafficking is going on. So
exactly,
we have to
but it's drawing attention to the issue.
Distinguish that a little bit. But I appreciate both of your opinions on this and the other issues. Thank you very much for being willing to talk about it. And we'll be back next week with another episode of Tennessee This Week.
The views of guests on Tennessee This Week are their own and do not represent the views of WATE 6 on your side or